Alright, hello, my name is Shaina. I'm an astrologer and tarot reader, and today I'm actually going to do a bit more personal of a video. So I'm really into progressed charts, which I could totally do more videos about progressed charts in the future if you're interested, but I probably pay too much attention to my progressed chart, and my progressed moon just went into Capricorn like a few weeks ago, and so I wanted to do a little update video about my experience with my Sagittarius progressed moon, and also this will cover just kind of what to expect if you're going into your progressed Sagittarius moon phase, which I will say it's a pretty cool little phase. I did a video about my Scorpio progressed moon on my old channel. I'll post that down below. It was only halfway through though. It was just a little check-in. So my moon progressed into Sagittarius on April of 2021, and it just progressed out of Sagittarius and into Capricorn on May 23rd, 2023. So that is pretty much exactly 2 years my moon has been in Sagittarius. So just a really quick recap. During my Scorpio moon, it was in my 4th house. It was on top of my Chiron for a period of time, and my mother actually died during that time. She passed in July of 2020 during the pandemic and like the height of it. She passed of ovarian cancer. To start off my Sagittarius moon period, my moon went right into the 5th house. Right now, a lot of my houses start at the very early degrees of the sign, so they're kind of aligned, which makes things a lot more literal, big shifts. And also my Pluto is in Sagittarius at 5 degrees, so right when my moon progressed into Sagittarius, it still had that scorpionic kind of flavor to it because it was conjunct Pluto. Throughout the entire time my moon was in Sagittarius, it was in my 5th house, so this is a very compatible house, so there'll be a lot of similar themes. It's very literal here. I mean, my Scorpio moon was in my 4th house and my mom died, if that's not the most literal thing you've ever heard. And during the beginning of my progressed Sagittarius moon, my moon was aspected so well. I can't believe it. It was a part of a kite pattern. It had no bad aspects. So I was like, oh, this must be like the best time of my life. Everything's gonna go great, and that wasn't necessarily the case. It didn't necessarily go badly. I just found that during the very beginning of my progressed Sagittarius moon, that was actually a pretty quiet time in my life. I would say April 2021 to the end of 2021, I had just moved into the middle of nowhere, which is a very Sagittarius moon thing. I was living in LA for like 6 years, I think, and then I decided to move into the middle of nowhere, but fuck nowhere. I moved to Fraser Park, this little town with literally 2,000 people. There was no Walmart. There was just like a local market. It was in the middle of the mountains. It was about an hour and a half away from LA, and it barely had internet. That was also a huge thing too. So it was a very Sagittarius move. I lived in like this wood cabin. It had a fireplace. Our backyard was literally just a public mountain range that you could like hike all the time. For a bunch of 2021, I actually didn't have internet. It was very touch and go. When you're out of internet, you result to watching a lot of movies. Very 5th house. I think all of this talks very much to the Sagittarius vibe, the almost kind of like running away to the middle of nowhere. I will say, you think Sagittarius 5th house, like, oh, I'm gonna go out all the time, this will be my party phase, like my hookup phase, and especially at the beginning of my moon phase, that was not true, which I have always said. I've always said this, Sagittarius moon is, I think, the most docile of all Sagittarius placements, and my experience with the Sagittarius moon, I think, is true. Now, it's still Sagittarius, it's still chaos, it's still gonna, you know, flip things around, lots of changes, lots of instability. It's still valid there, but it is a little less like crazy party girl than I think you might think. Not that I was very chill. It was actually very explosive and a bunch of stuff happened, but I wasn't like as social. That's a good word. It wasn't social in the way that you'd think it would be. A big thing that I started doing like the second my moon went into Sagittarius was reading. I read so much during my Sagittarius moon period. Again, the most docile of the Sag placements. You know, I've already posted a bunch of book reviews, and it was honestly when my moon progressed into Capricorn that my reading slowed down, which I'm shocked, but during that 2 years where my moon was in Sagittarius, it was like that's all I wanted to do for fun. That was like my escape, you know, 5th house. I read a lot about witchcraft, occult topics, astrology, numerology. I just really branched out. Very Sagittarius in the way that it's like I only wanted to read nonfiction books about one topic. but I wanted to turn like every corner within that topic and get to know everything about it. And there's something very satisfying about that Sagittarius like thirst for knowledge that it has, and I felt really sparked and my brain felt really almost like invigorated the whole time during the Sagittarius moon period, which is really, really lovely and why I love the Sagittarius energy so much. My moon in my 5th house phase was also a big time where I was kind of playing around with how I express myself more. Now, I've always dressed a little bit different, but I think during this phase when specifically my moon was conjunct Pluto and I just gotten out of the Scorpio moon phase, I was still dressing very dark, or just at least wear something very dramatic, and doing my makeup more extravagantly than I ever have. And there are some good parts of it, some bad parts of it, but it's very Sagittarius. And it took me forever to get ready during my 5th house moon period. The house that I lived in was 2 stories in Fraser Park. I'd never, ever lived in a 2-story house. We had like a loft bedroom in it. It was super cool. I had a giant walk-in closet, which I never had. So it was really luxurious in that way. Very Sagittarius house. I should also mention that during a big chunk of this time, my 5th house and my moon was intercepted, which it makes sense that my moon was intercepted because, again, like I mentioned, the loss of my mother, she's like everything to me. And so moon intercepted, there's a lack of a motherly figure, even just a lack of like nurturing feminine energy around me. So it makes sense that my moon was intercepted. Also during this time, because I was living in Fraser Park, but I still was going back and forth to LA all the time, like at least once a week. I was taking a lot of road trips, even to like go grocery shopping once a week. I had to drive up to Bakersfield to get groceries. So it was pretty inconvenient, but it was a beautiful place to live. It snowed. It actually had the 4 seasons. It was really badass. Anyways, so I was having a lot of knee issues at this time because I was driving so much, which again, obviously has to do with like my natal Capricorn stuff is knee issues. But I realized that I was feeling really flighty. Like I was happy where I was living, but I was dissatisfied with the environment that I was living in that house. It wasn't the most positive environment, and it made me always want to like feel like I needed to run away or flee or like get some space. And I think that my progressed Sagittarius moon was very much synced up with my knee in the sense that anytime I felt really like stuck, my knee would hurt. And it's like I found out that I had arthritis, and so I was going to physical therapy for a while and all this stuff, but moving forward, I wound up getting into a lot of arguments with my roommate. It just kind of became like the way of life that I knew. I have Mars in the 4th house natally, and even though my Sagittarius moon was well aspected, but it was just constant. It was constant bickering, constant explosiveness, constant like wanting to be louder than the other person. Very like Sagittarius random outbursts of energy was always constantly around me. Everything that I'm talking about, by the way, is when my moon is conjunct my Pluto. This is all in 2021. And I will say that I did less drugs and less partying when my moon was in Sagittarius than when my moon was in Scorpio. Moon in Scorpio in the 4th house was actually height of shaina, drugs, party girling out there. That was like the epitome of that time for me. And then with my progressed Sagittarius moon, I still went out sometimes and I still did do drugs with friends from time to time and stuff like that. But it definitely was not as extreme. I think with that Scorpio moon, you just like go so deep into something. But with Sagittarius, it was a little bit more like, I'll do some now and then like, oh, I can phase it out. But I will say during this time, I was definitely at least drinking most days and definitely smoking weed every single day. I didn't start smoking weed when I had a Scorpio moon, but it became like this everyday thing when my moon went into Scorpio. And then I think when my moon went into Sagittarius, it was just like I didn't even notice I was doing it at that time. Like it just becomes your lifestyle. Also, a big thing with my Pluto conjunct moon still being around is obviously, as I mentioned, I was dealing with the death of my mother and really having major issues dealing with that. Like I did not handle that well at all. I feel like I lost a lot of momentum. I feel like a completely different person from before my mom passed. And this is off topic, but I did read something where it's like when somebody passes in your life, the complexes that you held with them also die. And that is why a part of you dies. And complexes can be good or bad. And I definitely held a lot of complexes with my mom. And a lot of them were good. Some of them were just kind of neutral, but they were all like life building, if that makes sense, or like personality building. You know, like wanting to act was because of my mom. When she died, my want to act completely died with her, like immediately. And also with the Pluto conjunct moon progression, which by the way, anybody who's Gen Z, when you go through your progressed moon in Sagittarius, your moon will be conjunct Pluto at some point. So this actually will be relatable to you. These feelings of that intensity remaining from the Scorpio moon will stay there, if that makes sense. And also something that I was dealing with that I didn't realize had such a big effect on me at the time that I was dealing with it was that the person that I was living with in Fraser Park had really bad depression, and how much that like impacts your life as well, like impacts the other person's life that doesn't have depression. It really is like its own living, breathing being, and it like drags you down with it. You're hearing certain statements every day. You know how somebody that's depressed thinks. That energy is around you all the time. So even if you don't have depression, there is still like depression living with you, kind of literally. I had a lot of hurt feelings and pain that was also coming to the surface during this Pluto conjunction to my moon. For the most part, 2021 with my progressed Sagittarius moon, it was a lot quieter of a time than most of my times in my life, honestly. So let's push forward to the beginning of 2022. My moon is in a middle degree. It's like 15-ish, and I am getting flighty. I'm over it. It's time to just go out and say yes to more things as well. I felt this want to like change my life and make decisions which are more selfish and benefit me more than the other people around me or like the other person around me. And so I really started kind of doing my own thing and doing what I wanted to do a lot more. Not that I wasn't doing what I wanted to do in 2021. I just was like tired and needed a break from all the drama that I had been through in my Scorpio moon phase. There's like so much drama. The beginning of my Sagittarius moon was just like, I need a second to recover. So I guess I was looking for trouble a little bit, which is very Sagittarius moon in the 5th house. And a big thing that happened in April of 2022 is that my Venus went into Aquarius, and people think of like Venus and Capricorn as very committed and all that sort of stuff, but mine was not. My Venus in Capricorn was not committed. It was like, who's worth committing? No one. Like, it just thought it was so much better than everyone, and it also thought it wasn't good enough for the people it was worthy of, which is very Venus in Capricorn. And when I went into Aquarius, very much in my head I was like, I never ever want to be in a monogamous relationship. So I wind up saying yes to a bunch of experiences. During that time I was going back and forth a lot for some reason from Fraser Park to Vegas, which Vegas is my hometown and my dad lives in Vegas. In April of 2022 I wound up working this rockabilly convention. Oh my god, like it was the most Sagittarius 5th house meeting ever. I was working for this hair salon and I was just selling merch there, and then this guy came up to my table and he looked at me and I looked at him, and I was very taken by this man. So I was gonna just give him my Instagram because I don't like giving people my number, and he was like, oh, I don't have a phone. So I actually gave him my real phone number and he had to like go on somebody else's phone or something to text me. I was definitely in a very chaotic period during that time, very like Venus in Aquarius, Sagittarius moon, like, and I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm gonna dress ridiculous, I'm gonna wear ridiculous makeup, I'm here for a short time, not a long time, like all that sort of stuff. Also very Sagittarius 5th house moon to meet at like an old car show that are all very like flames, like extravagant, like goofy and fun or whatever. I would kind of consistently drive to Vegas to see this guy. He lived in an RV, so I stayed in an RV, which is very Sagittarius. And the best part about this is he asked me my sign first and he is a Sagittarius. Super fun, super spontaneous, like even like long distance relationship, all very Sagittarius Aquarius starts. We had dates that were very like flamboyant, very almost like exhibitionist, and basically I wind up really falling for him, and I wind up deciding to move back to Vegas. I'm also cutting off contact with my roommate at that time because it just became like overnight it became extremely just bad. Not at all an energy that I wanted in my life anymore. And I completely wound up cutting myself off from this person that I've been living with for like 4 or 5 years. So it was a very close friend to me. I think I did a very like Sagittarius cutoff of that person. And in June of 2022, I asked the Sagittarius to be my boyfriend. I asked them, very Venus and Sagittarius, very Venus and Aquarius of me, and very Scorpio Venus of them, for the girl to ask them. And I have never been anybody's girlfriend, so I got into my first relationship, so literal, in the middle of my Sagittarius 5th house moon period. So if you're going into your 5th house moon, you probably will get into a relationship. I mean, not for sure, but yeah, the move from Fraser Park to Vegas was very frantic. But my moon was still conjunct Pluto while I was moving out. It was just not a fun time at all. I really felt like I was fleeing. It was very stressful. My stuff was always in jeopardy of getting stolen as well. Very moon conjunct Pluto. It was a lot. It took a long time to move that whole house. And I was moving it into a room which was also full of stuff. So also during this time, I was going back and forth to Vegas to see my boyfriend, as well as moving my mom's stuff out of the room I was going to move into. Never been touched. I also had a closet full of stuff from my childhood that had never been touched. So I had to go through everything. Very moon conjunct Pluto, kind of reliving this like Scorpio moon phase in my life. Like I was crying a lot. It was really hard. It really sucked. But I finally got myself moved in around August. I do have Scorpio ruling my 5th house at this time. I should also mention it's not Sagittarius because it's intercepted. And my moon is still pretty well aspected. It's sextile my sun. It's trine my midheaven. And at this time, I was also going back and forth living between my dad's house, that room, and the RV. And we live on complete opposite sides of Vegas at this time. So I'm living a very Sagittarius moon lifestyle, very nomadic. I'm used to always having some sort of room, some sort of home. And during this time, very Sagittarius moon, I was literally living out of a suitcase. For the entire year, I was living out of a suitcase. But I will say that this summer, the Sagittarius 5th house moon summer, was one of the most fun and enjoyable times I had ever had. Me and my boyfriend were going out doing something nearly every day, doing a bunch of like tourist activities in Vegas, which Vegas is so Sagittarius in the 5th house, although I will say it was intercepted, so I never like gambled. My boyfriend was actually sober at this time, completely sober. He worked on the strip so we could sneak into pools, sneak into a bunch of stuff. We got kicked out of a few hotels. We'd go to some live shows. I grew a really strong connection to his dog, who's also a Sagittarius. So there was a lot of Sagittarius energy around me at this time. And what's also a big crazy point to make is that in August of 2022, which is when I fully moved out of Fraser Park and my old roommate was fully out of my life, was when my moon stopped being conjunct Pluto. And the day that I remember being like alone and in Vegas and like nothing was in Fraser Park or LA anymore, and I was like free from all that, and that was done and over with. I remember being on the outside on this bench and feeling like this huge sigh of relief. And then of course the first thing I did was check my phone, and I noticed that it was the first day that my moon was not conjunct Pluto anymore. I felt free. I felt like I could have fun. I felt like I could move forward now with my life from my mom passing. Like I can kind of get past things that had happened during that time. It was just like a huge weight, literally a huge plutonic sized weight lifted off of my chest. It was a big deal. And I really even dressed differently from that moment on. I dressed a lot lighter, a lot simpler, a lot girlier, a lot less makeup, spent a lot less time in the morning. And also, you know, during this time I only could have a few clothes, so I had to like make a capsule wardrobe. So I was wearing really simple things at that time, barely wearing any makeup because it was just so hot and there was no AC. So okay, really quickly, let me just paint a picture. This is a hot Vegas summer where it's like 110 every day, and I'm living in an RV with no AC. Like it was boiling in there. I was sweating 24/7, and I was also not allowed to use the shower inside the house. Yeah, I was trying to look my best, 5th house, but it was rough. Intercepted 5th house, okay? But I also spent a bunch of money during this summer. I spent more money than I'd like ever spent, and like way more frivolously than I've ever spent in my entire life. Very Sagittarius moon in the 5th house, but just because we were having so much fun and I didn't want to say no to these experiences because I knew that I would regret saying no more than I would regret the money that wasn't in my bank account. And even though I am still dealing with some financial repercussions from the summer, it was literally one of the best times of my entire life. It was kind of exactly what a progressed 5th house Sagittarius moon would promise, honestly. And it wasn't until a little bit in that my boyfriend started smoking weed. And that was my fault because I was smoking weed every day, as I mentioned. And we wound up smoking together in like the late summer. And then that just brought it into, we just got super into weed. And that was like our entire lives towards like the beginning of the winter time. So it got a little bit harder then. Capricorns love drugs. Like, I don't know why that's not more of a stereotype, but it is like absolutely true. I also think it's really interesting because my Venus in Aquarius really changed mindsets. At first, I didn't want to be in any sort of monogamous relationship. And then I met my boyfriend and I was like, this is the only person that I've ever met that I want to be in a monogamous relationship with and feel happy and comfortable and content. And I think that has to do with that Venus in Aquarius, like that fixed nature. Also, during the Sagittarius moon 5th house, as I mentioned, my boyfriend is a Sagittarius and we have very different views about a lot of things. Like, he was on a very shockingly other end of the spectrum to me when I first met him, but I definitely got more well-rounded point of view about things that I had never had before, which is very Sagittarius moon in the 5th house. It's very mutable. It kind of forces you to see the other side and not necessarily take on that other side's views, but be more almost like open-minded and almost a little bit more sympathetic towards it as well, which is really interesting and I'm very appreciative for because I love some kind of difference in my relationships. I'm still reading a ton about witchcraft and astrology. That is still happening. And I was doing really well health-wise during all of last year because I definitely opted for that Sagittarius moon attitude of like, if I just think I'm fine and tell myself I'm healthy, I'll be healthy. And that was really the attitude I adopted. I was like, I don't have time to be sick. I have fun things to do. I have goofy decisions to make. I have weed to smoke. I can't be sick kind of situation. Again, my moon is still intercepted. So during this time, I'm also dealing with 2 fatherly presences because I'm living with my dad and then my boyfriend's semi-living with his dad. And there was just a lot of masculine energy around me and absolutely no feminine energy around me. So it makes sense. Sagittarius is a masculine sign. 5th house is a masculine house. My moon is intercepted and I'm literally just around like men all the time. And my boyfriend's really into cars. And so people that are into cars are usually men. And so I'm around just a bunch of like dudes being dudes and I am like the girliest of Cancer risings. And so definitely feeling that moon interception, definitely feeling a lack of like that feminine energy in my life. And I was really still missing my mom a lot during this time. Even though my moon was out of being conjunct Pluto, it didn't feel like this weight. My moon was still intercepted, so the lack I felt so big. The inability to like call my mom and ask for advice was something that I needed more desperately during this time than probably ever in my life. So at the very end of 2022, I wound up running into real issues with my father. And I'm not trying to like bring this onto the internet in an extreme way, but it's really annoying and it like makes me like roll my eyes even thinking about it. But I will say that he is a Scorpio moon and it was showing. It was showing, guys. So moving into 2023, my whole life changes again. They're moving out to a small town in Vegas. If Fraser Park is to LA, the city that they moved to is to Vegas. I was honestly really excited. I'm literally only here to be with my boyfriend. But I should also mention I have no want to be in California. I have zero want to be in LA. I don't necessarily not want to be in Vegas, but I don't really want to be in Vegas. During this time, a bunch of stuff with my dad happens. I have a very small family. The only people I have is 2 aunts and my dad. My grandparents are all dead. My mother is dead. I have no siblings. I decided basically that my dad crossed a major line and I decided to move out. And it was very dramatic. I'm locked out of my house. All my childhood things are there. And the stakes are really high for me at this time because all of my mom's stuff is in my dad's house or in my childhood home. It was really, really scary and hard to get all my stuff out, and it was a very Sagittarius moon situation again, where I felt like I was fleeing. Basically, in January of 2023, all shit hit the fan. I stopped smoking weed because I had just left my dad and I was like, oh, things are getting serious now. I'm fleeing my childhood home. I'm trying to grab everything as frantically as possible, and it's like really hard to. And as well, my boyfriend is trying to move, and at the same time, we are quitting smoking weed after smoking weed every single day, every single second for like 6 months straight. And for me, for 5 years straight. And then February of 2023, I bought a shed and tried to store all my stuff at the shed. So now I'm moving again, basically. I'm moving to a shed. I was living in an RV and I was living in a room, and now I'm living in a shed. Quitting weed was really dramatic. It made actually a lot of mood swings. By the way, I stopped drinking in November, but that didn't affect me at all. And my boyfriend had never started drinking, so that like wasn't a thing. But the quitting weed was a thing. Like, it was a really hard time moving to that small town, moving away from my dad, and then trying to work. It was almost impossible to work and make content during this time because I didn't have a space of my own. There just wasn't a solution. I finally decided like I can't live here. So I just moved all my stuff to a shed in this town. I just moved all my stuff into this like closet in his RV. So basically I decided I had to move again. So if you've been counting, my moves during my Sagittarius moon phase are, at the beginning I had just moved to Fraser Park, then I moved to Vegas to live with my dad, then I'm living in the RV, and then I'm living in the RV in the small town outside of Vegas, and then I'm moving again so I can have my own room and my own space to work, basically an office. So that's 5 times. That's 5 times in 2 years that I am moving. So I finally found a place to live in, which is where I'm at right now. This is the room I found, and I am still going to my boyfriend's every weekend, so I am still living an extremely nomadic lifestyle. But yeah, very Sagittarius moon in the 5th house still. So now we're coming to the last few months of my Sagittarius moon. This is like this current time. I am not talking to my dad. I don't really have any family. Something else that's been very exciting that happened during my Sagittarius moon transit was that my boyfriend's dad has a bunch of dogs. As I mentioned, my boyfriend also has one of the dogs. The mom to the dog that my boyfriend has got pregnant, and she had 8 puppies. I was there when she like just got the puppies home, and I was there for the first few weeks of their life and everything, and I decided that since I have this new place, I have space and all that sort of stuff, I decided to get one of the puppies, which was not expected. I was not planning on getting a dog, but I was like, I love the mother and the father of this puppy so much. I love the half sister, the half brother. Like, she has a whole family. Her name is Pixie, and I got her home the week that my moon progressed into Capricorn. Now my moon is in Capricorn in the 6th house, and I'm just kind of spending time working and taking care of her, and I love her to absolute pieces. She's the best thing ever. She's a Cancer rising, Aries sun, Aries moon. She is half Pitbull, half Dogo Argentino. I literally cannot express how much I love this dog and how perfect she is. She's sleeping right now, but she is about 4 months in the time that I'm making this video. At the end of my Sagittarius moon in the 5th house, I'm basically kind of feeling the dust settle. I lived quite the free, spontaneous life, and I'm really realizing that I have to kind of grow up. I am 26, and I'm realizing like, oh, I guess I'm kind of old now or whatever. And now since my moon progressed into my 6th house, and it is square my Saturn and square my Mars, so it's not in the best aspects right now. And that makes sense because I'm feeling a little bit not like a Capricorn moon in the 6th house. I'm like, okay, so I should have all my shit together, but I'm still very much feeling like a Sagittarius moon in the 5th house that's kind of all over the place and spontaneous and sporadic and not maybe making the best decisions, because I am still just in the mood of having fun, but I'm sure that'll shift as my moon progresses more into Capricorn. And also the beginning of 2023 was when I first started actually actively practicing witchcraft, which has been really good for me, I think, and really interesting, and gotten me a lot more connected to my intuitive side as well, which is really nice. Okay, if I'm being like really honest in this video. And so I was sober from alcohol from November 20th to April 20th. and I was sober from weed January 20th till about late June. Let's just say June 20th. It was a little later than that. But so yeah, now I'm back to smoking and drinking, which at first it was just drinking and it was fun, and it was the first time me and my boyfriend got drunk together, which is also very Sagittarius 5th house moon, and it was really fun. And then I recently just got back into smoking weed, which is, I don't know how I feel about it. I'm like going back and forth about if I think it's okay or not. I don't know. And I definitely think this is my Capricorn moon in the 6th house taking hand. I am going into my progressed lunar return because my natal moon is in Capricorn. But I definitely think my life is again going to really change during this cycle. I'm gonna guess it's going to become a lot more structured, and I'm really going to have to like grow up and be an adult now is my guess, because I still feel so young and I feel so youthful, but I'm also like a Capricorn stellium, so I feel like I should just like have all my shit together by now. But also I'm coming from my Sagittarius 5th house moon period, so who gives a fuck? I'm just a floating nebulous in space. I don't know. But also I know is that at the last few months of my Sagittarius moon, when it started to get a little hot, I went to a bunch of concerts, we went to the beach again, we took a bunch of trips, I've had a bunch of fun, I've again spent too much money, but it's all okay. I trimmed my bangs for the first time yesterday, and I'm sure you can tell. Anyways, if you're still in this video, thank you so much for watching. It's been quite the roller coaster for the past 2 years. Let me know what progressed moon phase you're going through in the comments and how it's affected you. All right, so thank you so much for watching. Bye.